And NFL analyst for A to Z Sports joins us this morning. Kyle, how you doing, man? I saw you breaking everything down over the last couple of days. How you doing these days?
Man, it's good to have football back and be off and running. So
Yeah.
it's hard to complain. You know what I mean?
No, you're right. Hey, I love your take on everything with the team, especially that first group the other day, the starting five. For me, it started with that starting five on the offensive line. I know they had a bunch of their starters out, but you know what? You got to play against who's ever playing there, and they did such a good job. Who impressed you the most on that offensive line? How the kids doing, by the way? Everybody's good over there?
Yeah, everybody's good. We're just doing the drop-off now. But speaking of kids, I think these young guards back. Have a good day, okay, buddy? Love you.
There you go.
Jonah
I love that.
Savaiinaea.
We don't get to see that side of you, Carl. That's beautiful. I love that, man.
I usually have it timed out a little differently. So, Jonah Savaiinaea and Kadyn Proctor, I think, were both guys that put some good stuff on tape on the offensive line. And Jonah in particular, the confidence in which he's moving, and that's been the word. You know, I asked Bobby Slowick about that down at camp when we heard from Bobby. Confidence was the first word out of his mouth, and I think you see it with, you know, the first set they come up, they're backed up inside their own 5-yard line, and he's going against a top 50 pick in Johnny Newton from a couple years back at defensive tackle, and he quick sets him, he short sets him, he gets his hands on fast, he's got good balance, and that kind of stuff was just not super consistent last year when you watched him play. So that was like right off the jump, the first rep against a guy that got drafted pretty high. That was the kind of rep that jumps out at you when I watched him go back across his 24 snaps that he ended up playing on Friday night.
Proctor, on the other side, I just thought the guard play was just really good. What do you think of Proctor?
The thing that stood out to Proctor for me was just the easy – the gas in which he can apply to moving people, right? That displacement ability where the angle's always what you would expect when you're kind of operating in a live setting for the very first time in an actual game. No, it wasn't perfect from that regard. But, man, when he gets hands on guys, he moves people. And that's kind of the opposite of what the past scheme had called for, where we're going to get you the angles, and as long as you have the angle, you're good. Well, Proctor has a physical skill that I think allows him to, even if the angles aren't great, he's still creating these impactful and effective moves at the point of attack for defenders to help create creases. And as we saw, this team ran downhill, right? Like all of Devon Achane's carries were between the tackles. They had one off-tackle run,
right,
but it was still off-tackle. It wasn't outside.
That's right.
So I think that was the big talking point for me coming out of watching the film was, hey, they bulked up on the offensive line. We had some questions about what the run game looks like, so we still have to see as we get a bigger sample size. But they came right downhill throughout all of those runs and had success doing so because they got displacement up front.
Let's talk about 6, 7, and 8. Kind of the theme of this team actually is key reserves right now and starters in some cases, and guys going to rotate in. But Caedan Wallace, what was your take on the guy we just traded for from the Patriots?
Yeah, he played well in the reps that he had, while you still kind of saw, I think, a lot of the newness of what he has to learn to execute. I think when you watched him at Penn State and then you also watched him in New England, the way that he was getting off the ball versus, it's the point of emphasis in this offensive coaching scheme is you got to run off the ball, right? You have to have that urgency off the ball. And it kind of creates a learning curve for a lot of guys when they get into it. And we saw that with Jonah, obviously, last year. And Caedan Wallace at the joint practice of Washington said, I got my first snaps at tackle in about 18 months on Wednesday. And then he goes out there and he plays in the game. And he's been on the team for 3.5 days. And he's playing tackle.
Yeah.
So while, yes, he from maybe a level of competition and who he's blocking standpoint, it's guys that are at the bottom of the roster. But for a guy who was a top 100 pick, despite the fact that you have this newness in the scheme and new points of emphasis, he physically looked like a different caliber of player than what he was playing against. And I think that's the best you could have hoped for with Caedan Wallace and the reps that he got. And he's a huge piece of the puzzle now because the Dolphins put Jamari Sawyer on IR yesterday.
That's right. Yeah, we got that bad news. Anybody else getting better on the O-line? Charlie Heck is, another guy that's got a lot of experience in the league. How is he playing? And anybody else kind of pop out at you that you would trust at a 6, 7, or 8 spot as key backups to the starting 5?
Yeah, I think the best storyline out of this group right now for me is probably Josh Preeb, who was here last year. He went to Northwestern and then Michigan, and I thought he did some nice things on tape where I thought DJ Campbell, for as good of a flash of camp that he's had, I thought he looked a little bit more like a rookie first getting his first run of action. So I think Josh Preeb was the one of the rest of the group that I really thought he showed he had a little something, and I'm eager to see if he can stack on that and build.
By the way, let's get to some really, really good stuff. And besides the confidence of these guys, and we got a lot more to do, but my gosh, how about the potential news of getting another weapon on the outside coming back? I don't want to rush it. I don't want to play a doctor this morning again, but I can't help myself. How about Chris Bell coming back and maybe week 3 at home against Kansas City, maybe week 5 at the latest at home against Cincinnati, playing on natural grass? What are your thoughts on and just having our 2 rookie receivers playing together out there? God, that's going to be fun to watch.
So here's kind of where I'm at with, if they felt this was going to be like a month into the season, they have now effectively burned a potential IR to return spot for a player that was already on a reserve list.
Right.
So if I'm reading in between the tea leaves from that standpoint, I kind of feel like, okay, like you've obviously been cleared. You're in a red non-contact because you're not on the same timeline as everybody else. But I kind of have the expectation like he's working to playing shape now. And obviously if he's on the active roster, he's been medically cleared. So I think this all just kind of depends on how he comes along to go from I'm in rehab mode to being in between rehab mode and playing shape mode to now it's all about getting back into football shape. So we've got about a month till the season starts.
That's true.
Even if he's on a snap count early, like that's kind of not knowing anything and just making like trying to read between the lines. Maybe there's a snap count for him early, but that would kind of be my most likely outcome for him at this stage. The start of the season.
Yeah, I think that bye week coming up is going to be big, where they're really going to amp it up and see what he's got, during that time. And then, like you said, the following week, you start getting ready for Las Vegas. Hey, so anyway, while we're at all that stuff, I love defensively some of the things we got to see from Trey Moore and Kyle Lewis moving around, now playing a little safety apparently in practice yesterday. I thought his coverage was really good in those one-on-one drills against the Commanders. And, boy, I can see why they want to get him out there. Trey Moore, they must love. They played him damn near the whole game. I think he played almost 50 plays. And Chris Johnson inside and outside, they really, really work into their 3 draft picks defensively into a lot of different looks.
Yeah, and a lot of versatility with all 3 of those guys, right? So it's kind of you got to play them in different spots and figure out where the limits are. Like what's the perimeter of the yard that you're working with for how big of a responsibility you can give each one of these guys. So Trey, for the pass rush ability that he has, going back to UTSA, he rushed the passer 1 time in 48 snaps against Washington. So a lot of off the ball, stack linebacker. That's kind of where he's less experienced as a player, but obviously with what Jeff Hafley has talked about with being multiple front and being able to go with odd and even spacing with how many guys you have on the line of scrimmage and having the ability to have somebody out there that can be interchangeable with walking off the ball or walking up on the edge. That's there for the taking, right? And obviously he was listed as the first string Sam linebacker on the first unofficial depth chart. Now you take that with a grain of salt because it's an unofficial depth chart if you want, but at the same time, like it's not nothing. And then you watch him go out and the purpose that they have in getting him all those reps certainly feels like to me that they're trying to get him to a place where they know what he's comfortable with and what he's not so that they can use him to build out some of their base defense package stuff. It's really interesting.
All right, so Zach Sieler, I'm guessing, is not going to be playing any football till the start of the season. I just feel that way with things, and they know what he can do. I don't think they're worried about him. He plays injured during the season, the whole deal. He's a tough, old-school guy. So now we get to see a lot of Phillips, Grant, and hopefully Biggers will be back and playing. So I'm just curious, how did those two guys look, and how did Biggers look to you before you took off and went back home?
Yeah, it's a really interesting group where I think there's potential for all of those guys to play in different spots. And I think with Zach being down for the rest of the potentially the rest of the summer, Jeff Hafley described that as a week-to-week type of thing. So if your prediction comes through and he doesn't play the rest of preseason, like, those are big reps for Zeke to kind of be the guy that I think can kick out there and play some of that kind of stuff. And he certainly looks physically different. He's got a little bit more twitch. I think you could tell that he dropped the weight that he did. He looks leaner, and I think that was a change for the better for him to kind of unlock some of his explosiveness. And instead of just being like a straight line powerful guy, hopefully he can have not like Chop Robinson, Josh Uche cornering ability, but maybe just a little bit more flexibility to be able to turn some tighter corners, especially if he's getting a rush condensed into like a B gap where you're either as a 3-tech in a rush front or as a 4-eye in some of your odd front stuff. So I think there's a lot of potential with the boosted first step for Zeke to claim himself a large size of the rotation. And then for those other two guys, I think Jordan Phillips is as advertised as a stalwart at the point of attack. I think he's going to be very, very good at the role that he has to play, but that's predominantly on early downs and in base defense. And I thought Kenneth Grant, we only saw him, 10 snaps against Washington in the preseason game, and he had a couple nice reps against the run in the joint practice. And I thought he looked like he was also, like Zeke Biggers, moving a little bit better as a guy that I think you could see there's a visible change in his body composition this offseason as well.
All right, I got to get to the backup quarterback situation. I think we all feel the same way about Malik. I think everybody's coming around on Malik Willis. Some have taken a little longer than others, but everybody's going, damn, now we've seen a little bit. Potentially, he could be pretty darn good. So let's talk about Quinn Ewers. Can he be the backup quarterback? Are you now concerned? He has not had a great camp. I think you were out there and saw a lot of the practice. What's been your take on Quinn Ewers? Maybe you feel he's played better than that.
Well, I think what you saw in the preseason game has largely been what the vast majority of training camp has been like for Quinn. So now he's dealing with a groin injury, so it sounds like he's not going to be up this week, and they brought back Mark Gronowski, and apparently Dave Furonis reported that there was a second undisclosed injury that he'd been dealing with, and that's kind of the other thing about Quinn is Quinn missed games every single year at Texas with being banged up with his shoulder, and then he had the oblique injury. So I don't know that it helps me feel any better knowing that, he was working through something. Well, that's kind of been on his resume at Texas. So if I were the Dolphins, I would probably be aspiring to keep 3 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster. But I do feel like Cam Miller and Quinn Ewers are probably generally cut from the same cloth. So I would be looking for another young quarterback that slips through the cracks when you get the cut downs, that has some, maybe you feel like there's some physical ability to work with. I think there is a gap between the physical upside of those two guys versus Malik that creates a potential gap where if you have to go to your backup quarterback, you maybe take some stuff off the table for what you're able to run your offense with. So I think maybe like somebody with some toolsiness could help you in that regard. But by and large, if it's not Malik Willis, like nobody's coming through the door that I think is going to elevate the offense as a whole. And I think that's where hopefully we don't have to see the backup quarterback at all this season. But if we do, especially for an extended period of time, I think the conversation for next spring becomes a little bit less comfortable as far as the forecast long-term at quarterback in Miami.
Yeah. Hey, I feel like we have 2 wide receivers that have kind of pulled away from everybody else, and the 2 guys that started, Caleb Douglas and Malik Washington. Do you feel that way with this group? Even the way they were used in the preseason game told me I saw a lot of veterans playing late into the third and the fourth quarter. What is your take on who you trust at the wide receiver position to be one of the 5 or 6 guys you keep?
I think you mentioned the two names that for me, absolutely, by the end of the 2 weeks that I was down in Miami for camp, I felt they had created a significant amount of separation between themselves and the rest of the group. Now, what gets interesting is because Chris Bell not being potentially a reserve at this stage, that changes the math and the numbers for everybody else, right? So now that competition for, if they're going to keep, we joked in the stands at practice about keeping every tight end on the roster, and I don't think they will, but if they keep more than average number of tight ends, is that one less wide receiver that you're keeping? Or maybe now you're only keeping 5. AJ Henning has had a nice camp, and I think he would probably be my first one off if I had to do a list. And if you told me they were keeping 5 receivers, Henning would probably be my first one off. And I think that's a testament to the work that he's done.
Yeah, he's had a good camp.
Conversations. Yes. So, but the Chris Bell being worked up and potentially being on the 53 for the start of the season is bad news for Tutu Atwell and Jalen Tolbert and Terrence Marshall and Jalen Reagor. Like, that whole group, you might get one out of that group of 4 names that I just mentioned.
Yeah. The tight end position is going to be interesting. It really is. Dulcich, obviously. Kaczmarek is definitely looking good and blocking, and just talk about his blocking a little bit, by the way. He really gets after it.
Yeah, it's that same conversation that we had about Kadyn Proctor and the easy gas that he has to put his foot on the pedal and, like, move guys. You see that with Kaczmarek as far as when he rolls through contact into somebody.
Yeah.
He's walling guys. We had one rep against Washington where Kaczmarek was blocking Joshua Josephs, who was a mid-round rookie this year out of Tennessee, and Kadyn Proctor, I think, got Shy Tuttle, who's been a rotational player in the NFL for quite a while. And they were both on the left side of the formation. And by the time the play was over, both of those guys had washed those guys so far down the opposite side of the line of scrimmage. Joe, they were out of the frame. The back end angle shot of the play, they blocked them both out of the frame from the play side. So you watch reps like that, and it's hard not to let your imagination run a little while. Maybe not like immediately, but long term, as these guys develop and get more reps and get more consistent and more experience, like you start projecting what this can look like. And I think you can very easily see the vision here.
All right. Last question. I'm running late because I'm not going to bug you anymore this week. Chop Robinson, clearly the best pass rusher. I think we agree on that. Who's the second guy that we trust out there? I saw a lot of guys getting blocked. Is there a second guy that looks a little bit better than, or a third guy? Is there a second and third guy for you? Where do you stand on the other side?
I still have Uche as the number 2. I think he's had some nice moments in camp. He's had some good battles with both Austin Jackson and Patrick Paul in practice, and those guys have starting experience, and you kind of know what they are as NFL players. And if you can get some wins against those guys, I kind of feel like you can be a strong piece of the puzzle. You know, maybe not like a game changer or a field tilter or a marquee player, but I feel pretty comfortable with Uche as a guy that's the number 2 pass rusher on the team. The number 3, I think, is the really interesting battle with David Ojabo and Robert Beal. They both got just about even number of snaps in the game against Washington. I thought Ojabo looked much more consistent than what Robert Beal did. But Beal was listed ahead on the unofficial depth chart, which is unofficial, so take it for what it's worth again, right? But I think that spot is the one that's interesting to me, because when you pair it with the young guys and some of the inside-outside flexibility, you might not get a ton of spots. So you could be seeing a position battle there. Cleveland Ferrell's down right now and has been for about a week and a half. So they signed him right before camp. He's probably a pretty safe bet to make the 53. So now that's Beal and Ojabo battling for potentially one spot. So I think that's a really interesting battle, but I like Ojabo and what he did against Washington.
Kyle, thank you, man. Good stuff. Let me see. You dropped off the kids and you did this. Oh, you're amazing. You're still at the school. What, you're right outside the class right now.
No,
I appreciate it.
I'm down the street at the gas station. Put some gas in the truck and off I go.
Kyle, thank you. I appreciate it, bud. Thanks for coming on.
Of course. Good chat with you, man.
All right. Kyle Krabs, the host of Locked On Feds podcast and NFL analyst for A to Z Sports. Oh, man, summer's here. And